Hello and welcome back to the Saints Squad Show. I'm your host Dylan Sanders of Saints Wire and Pelicans Roundtable. And I don't know, guys. I just think that Spencer Rattler probably should have caught all of his passes for him, not fumbled it, and not given up 300 yards.
I'm Darian Gray of Who Dat Dish, and this game feels oddly and unfortunately familiar to the first three matchups of the year.
It's the Saints Squad. Everything New Orleans Saints, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from down in the Big Easy, the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Saints Squad Show, starting now.
Howdy, Internet Nation, and welcome back to the Saints Squad Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every Sunday and Wednesday. We have a unique group of experts here ready to bring you a fun and informative show on everything New Orleans Saints. Today, we're going to be diving into the somewhat disappointing loss to the New England Patriots. It felt like they could have had a chance, but they didn't. We're going to give our instant reactions. We're going to dive into the defense, dive into the offense, hand out some Player of the Game awards, and have some fun with the chat along the way. Right now, it's just me and Darian. We're going to have Ross jump in at some point. It's kind of how these Sunday episodes go. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Darian, why don't you go ahead and start us off with your instant reactions to this game? I know it's not going to be a fun one to talk about, for most of it, but why don't you get us started?
Yeah, I felt like this game was really familiar to three of the first four, not the first three, but the first game, second game, and the fourth one against Buffalo, in which you were in the game, you were playing close, and then at the end, you had a chance to win. You didn't come out with the victory. It just felt like the same script. You get the ball late in the fourth quarter. Are you going to be able to drive down and get the touchdown or field goal, depending on what the game was? This time, yet again, they didn't deliver. And it's a disappointing trend that we continue to see. But I'll say this. The difference between this game and those games is it felt like you weren't really in the same group, maybe even weren't even in adjacent groups. With New England, I'm not going to say that you guys are in the same spot because I do believe that the Patriots are in a better place than the Saints are right now. This was 100% a winnable game going in. This was a game that I thought they had a chance to win. I would not have picked them to win, but I did think they had a chance. And it's a game when you play close like this, you're frustrated with yourself that you weren't able to pull it out. And to me, the cliche of field goals versus touchdowns, some things are cliches for a reason. Sometimes things are often said because they are true. And this is one of those cases. While the Saints had to settle for Blake Groupie field goals, I mean, golf clap to him for making the field goals. I know we have frustrations with him, so I'll give some sort of shout out there. But when you have to consistently settle for field goals and the Patriots are getting touchdowns on their big plays, that's the difference in a game where the offense began to slow down for both teams in the second half.
Yeah, it is. It sucks because it is a very winnable game, like you mentioned, and it is one where you get the Blake Groupie game that we all wanted. He went 4 for 4, hit a 54-yard one. It was a great one. He was good. You have like some young stars. Danny Stutzman's getting in the game.
Big Stutz.
Quincy Riley's maybe the best cornerback. We'll get into that a little bit later. Chris Olave is catching some passes. And Spencer Rattler overall, I think, had a great day. He had there were a couple of miscues. Can't ask anyone to be perfect. But I think overall he had one of his better days. So then it all is for naught because you can't get a stop at any point, really. And definitely not whenever it matters. So it's frustrating. It's definitely frustrating is the number one word I would put to this game.
Yeah, you mentioned how Rattler had an overall good game. I'll be interested to go back in on film review and really look at that red zone to 30-yard line efficiency, because I think one drive stalled out at like 21. So technically it won't go into the red zone stats if I'm not mistaken. But I'd be really interested to go in and look at to see what broke down each time, because Rattler did have a good game. But I think it'll be very difficult for people to continue to grasp that if the Saints don't deliver points in the red zone. Because at the end of the day, I think the conversation around Rattler and Shuck, it sometimes distorts what the conversation is around all quarterbacks, and that's that your offense's successes and failure all fall at your feet. They all fall in your lap. So when the Saints aren't doing well in the red zone, that's going to be a conversation around Kellen Moore and Spencer Rattler. Doesn't matter if a person dropped a pass here, or maybe this person didn't read this hole, or there was just a good play by the defense. When you have a history of a problem, it's going to fall back on the team because everybody is making this happen to you. So it must be something that you yourself are doing. Whether it was, I didn't love the holding call on Banks there. I understood it. If I was
we can talk about, there are a lot of questionable calls in this one.
Yeah, it wasn't a great officiating day, in my opinion. And I don't have to worry about getting fined, so we can definitely talk about it. Yeah. But I didn't love that call. I understood it. I felt like his arm was kind of around. I felt like, the DN slipped. It looked worse than I think it actually was. But whether it's penalties, whether it's unforced errors, whether it's bad play calling, it just feels like the Saints continue to find a way to come up short in the red zone. So to bring that all the way back to Rattler, as we were talking about, that's going to fall on his shoulders. That's going to fall in his lap when the conversation gets started, whether it's fair or not fair. And I think until those things get straightened out consistently, or at least for a game where the Saints come out with a win, I think that's going to be a difficult point for people to get over when trying to understand that Rattler played well in pretty much the other regions of the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things of, bigger number equals better person, especially better football player. But watching other games, watching other teams, and Spencer Rattler is far from the issue of this team. It feels crazy that we have to keep saying it, but people still always complain about Spencer Rattler because the offense is not putting up points. But at the same time, you have a run game that doesn't work. You have an offensive line that is struggling, and whenever they're getting stops, it's because they're holding. And then you have players dropping passes that hit them, and then whenever the players get open, then it's whenever Spencer Rattler misses a throw and then is held at the stake. Because he misses a throw. There are a lot of people that still think that I really want Spencer Rattler to fail for some reason. It happens every week in the comments. I don't know how many more weeks I have to go of defending him and saying that he is fine. They don't need to make a change for that to change. But, I'll stick my flag in again. I think Spencer Rattler is perfectly fine for this team, and he's a perfectly capable NFL quarterback. And I think we've seen that time and time again. The weapons, however, really let him down in this one. And we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, we will.
Other first instant reactions, I think we have to talk about the officiating. It was consistent. I'll give them that throughout the day. But it was bad. It was poor. Very, very bad on both teams or both sides. Really terrible officiating crew in this one.
Yeah, I thought that Diggs PI, I thought it was an okay call only because Riley jumped. And the way Riley jumped, it made it look like, I don't know if he sold her or anything, but it definitely made it look like I could have got to this ball if you didn't put your hand there. It didn't feel like it was a lot of contact, but the reaction said it was. But then the next play, was that Riley on that? And I think the next play was Riley was going against another receiver, and it felt like he was a little handsy, and they didn't call it. So it was like, it was not good officiating. I thought that third and short that was tossed to Olave, I thought that that defender was a little close on that. It just, like you said, they were consistently bad. They say if you're going to give consistency, that's all you can ask for. Mm-hmm. But when you see multiple calls, it's just like, I don't know, the Banks holding that we talked about. These are pivotal plays. Yeah. Like the Diggs reception, that would probably put points on the board. I can't remember the exact score at the time, but that would have went a long way and probably icing the Saints a little early.
The game would have been a little bit earlier. And honestly, just to put it bluntly, Brandon Staley should be thanking his lucky stars that that the officiating crew was bad, because his team was getting beat consistently over again.
Talk about the real bad one, the real PI. Oh my God.
The first one was one of the worst ones ever. It made no sense. The Brandon Staley defense is getting picked apart today. I mean, part of it is Drake May is a really, really good quarterback, and he's a great young quarterback. And I think that he's looking to be on that next level, that next tier of quarterback. I would definitely put him above Rattler for right now.
Yeah.
Got to keep him guessing if I'm pro or anti Rattler.
For those who don't know, I actually texted him that entire script where he started talking good about Rattler. I ghost wrote that whole thing.
Yeah, this is my real opinion. Spencer Rattler can never throw another quarterback. No. Drake May's great, and that's part of it. And then it's kind of bittersweet to see Kayshon Boutte putting up big games, and it is. Especially bittersweet because I used to live in Buffalo, see Stephon Diggs put up big games in a different uniform. So, I don't know. It's interesting. Bad defense. I want to see more out of the secondary for sure.
Yes.
Kool-Aid McKinstry has had a great game last week and then immediately comes back and has a terrible game. Jonas Sanker was getting beat a little bit. I mean, rookie struggles maybe. Bad. What do you think of the defense so far?
Okay, so I'm going to try to keep it limited because I don't want to, eat up too much of what we're going to do in the second segment. But did we just want to say what it is? The Giants don't have any receivers. I mean, if we're being honest, Kool-Aid didn't look that good throughout the year, and he was playing against guys that were talented receivers, whether it was a Marvin Harrison Jr., who I know everybody has an opinion on, but there's talent there. I can't remember who was there at San Francisco. They had so many injuries, so I don't remember who was playing that day. But you go through Jackson Smith and Jigba. You have Cooper Kupp. You have players in Seattle. You have players in Buffalo, right? New York don't have any receivers. So, I mean, he had good plays independent of that. I don't want to completely take away from it, but there's just a difference when you're faced with talented guys in front of you. And I think that Kool-Aid has not shown that he can perform when there's formidable talent in front of him. And I think we hoped that the confidence would be restored. I don't think anybody championed it as this lockdown game from Kool-Aid last week, but there was a hope that the confidence would be there and that everything would kind of click for him because we know how important that trait is at his position. And it just wasn't the case. It just wasn't. Whether it was, I swear that he was Boutte when he was at LSU. And then everybody just said Boutte. And you were LSU. You were there at LSU. Am I wrong?
It's Boutte.
Has it always been Boutte?
Yeah, I think it was people giving them the benefit of the doubt. And I think there's a city called Butte. I think the city there is a Butte. No, that's Butte. That is Butte, Louisiana. I'm pretty sure it is Boutte. It's Kayshon Boutte. But he was not Boutte today. I'll give him that. No. He was having a great game.
Yeah, But yeah, okay. No, he was not. But it was a rough day, and I felt like this was. For the Saints defense, I felt that this was the pivotal matchup, and they lost it. And I think it was a big reason on why they lost the game. I just didn't expect it to be Douglas to be the one hurting them early off. I thought it would be just Boutte and Diggs, but it ended up being Douglas early, and they got lucky that Douglas didn't have 100 yards on 2 catches. So,
yeah, it was bad. I guess overall, final first instant reactions, I would probably say Spencer Rattler, good. Offense still really needs to figure out in the red zone because, finally you got a good Blake Groupie game, but you couldn't get it, couldn't get it in the end zone. So that's a lot of points in a one-score game. Those field goals add up in terms of that -4 points. And then the defense, really bad. The pass rush was not good enough. We haven't talked about the pass rush yet. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit coming up. Pass rush wasn't good. The secondary wasn't great. Overall, disappointing, frustrating game. What are your final instant reactions?
Final instant reaction is the Saints need help at all the premier positions, pretty much. I just think you do. You need receivers who are going to come down with certain plays. And honestly, I think that you got bailed out because I thought he caught it and fumbled. But you need guys, pass catchers, whether it's a tight end or a receiver. You need guys who are going to come down with those pivotal plays, hold on to the ball. You need guys who are going to attack and finish at the quarterback. You need guys who can cover on the back end. All of the deficiencies for the Saints, I thought, were very much so on display against the New England Patriots. And the reason that probably feels almost as bad as it did against Seattle, despite the game being much closer, is that you and the Patriots are much closer than you and Seattle are. So now when all your deficiencies are exposed by someone you could consider your peer, now we really need to have a conversation at that point. So that's my last instant reaction.
All right. Well, We're going to get into the defense coming up next. We're going to talk pass rush, secondary, all of that, point some fingers, and have some fun. You know the saying, look good, feel good? The problem is that most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. You can look sharp, but you're probably going to feel stiff, hot, and they're all high maintenance. That's why there's Mizzen and Main. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel comfortable. They actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they've perfected it ever since. I love that you can go from the office to dinner or even out to the golf course and still feel comfortable all day. I guess you could say that Mizzen and Main lets you get to risen and making it rain all in one outfit. That part was written by me. It's not there. That was my fault. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com with promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's Mizzen, spelled MIZZEN, and Main, MAIN.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main in stores in select states. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. The real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. The Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score various perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, let's dive a little bit deeper into the defensive side of the ball because that is, I think, the biggest area of focus from this game. The offense is stuff we've all said before and seen before. Let's talk about the defense and at least complain about something different. So, Darian, how are you feeling? Where do you want to start on defense today?
I'll start with what I thought was extremely interesting was the miscommunication or maybe lack of trust between Jonas Sanker and Quincy Riley on the two big plays where they were both the ones involved. And it looked kind of like on the first touchdown, Jonas jumped a little too far outside, but it felt like he should have just trusted that Riley would be there and he should have maintained inside leverage. And then on the other touchdown, it felt like Riley didn't trust Sanker on the inside and kind of tried to play a little too far inside, and it ended up with the outbreaking route scoring for a touchdown. And I just thought that was probably one of the more interesting things that I saw with two players with, in my opinion, being first mistake being on Sanker and then the second one being on Riley. They made the same exact mistake. And it was a really interesting play. And I wonder in the psyche, was there the question of, I got to do this all myself? Because last time Sanker wasn't there on Riley's mentality or on Riley's mind. That was one of the things that really stood out to me. But all in all, you didn't do a good job keeping a cap on the offense. You just had too many big plays. Some were negated by penalty. I think that both of those were questionable penalties, but you'll take it when it helps you out. But yeah, the Saints just didn't do a good job of keeping a lid on this defense. I mean, on this Patriot offense, whether it was Booty, whether it was Diggs, whether it was Douglas, it just didn't seem to matter. Everybody was able to eat down the field.
Yeah. And that one big play really hurt Quincy Riley's numbers for the day. He was targeted 4 times, gave up 2 catches and 45 yards, with 29 of them coming on that one big play. And to be fair, it wasn't terrible. That one of them was pretty bad coverage. The other one was good coverage, better catch. It was overall, though, I still think right now I would say Quincy Riley is the team's best quarterback, and that is not a great thing because he is. I'm really happy with him, and I think that he's, showing good stuff, and he's looking good for a rookie. But Kool-Aid needs to be way better. Ike Adam was a bit of a disappointing signing, and then the rest of the cornerback room is non-existent. Outside of Alontae Taylor, but even he is not playing good enough to where you're like, man, they really got to give him that paycheck after this year.
Yeah, how did you feel about that? The report coming out that a mid-season extension was being discussed. I didn't necessarily think that he was the perfect candidate for a mid-season extension. Maybe you get to the end of the year, but I didn't necessarily see mid-year.
I mean, I think I've always been a little bit lower than most people on Alontae Taylor, just because I do think that there is value there. He is versatile. He can cover both inside and outside, but he seems more of a jack of all trades, master of none to me. And that's not the kind of guy that I think that the Saints right now need to be like, well, we got to have him. We got to extend him in the middle of the year. I was a little bit surprised about that, but it's okay. I mean, I do get it. I bet he's probably really big in that locker room. He is a solid player. He can do a lot. He's the kind of player that even, I think coaches probably like more than fans. I'll say.
I can see that. And I think your point about Quincy Riley being the best corner on the team, it kind of has me conflicted because they're both young guys. I have come to grips with the idea that the Saints need to get a number one cornerback next year. But like I said, you kind of need guys.
New number ones in most places.
Yeah, so maybe you don't get that guy this offseason, but I could easily see Kool-Aid and Riley competing for the second cornerback job next year because Riley still has to have time. Like I think Sanker had those. I'm just gonna put one of them on him because that's how I felt in the moment. And maybe film review and everything, it'll be different. But in the moment, it felt like one of those plays was on him. The first touchdown, he got absolutely turned around. It happens, right? And how do you respond? Like you're just gonna have to respond on this play or on the season. And we'll see what happens when Riley gets his moment where it's like, oh yeah, that was a bad one. Then I'll see what his response is. But I think that the cornerback position is being exposed as something that really needs to be addressed and not something that you can just get by with. And I don't want to turn this into a draft conversation because I just think it's a little early, but it will be interesting to see at the end of the year when you have, let's just assume Kool-Aid and Riley starting for the majority of the year, health permitting, and then you have Young and Granderson starting on the edge. I think those are two positions where you think you might need a top guy, especially early in the draft. I wonder which one of those positions end up looking like more of a need going into the offseason.
All right, let's move on a little bit to the defensive line. Let's go with the, Chase. Let's talk about Chase Young because he finally played. He's back. And I think he had a quintessential Chase Young game. He made a couple of plays. He had some pressures and came away with no sacks. Chase Young, the almost sack king, is back. He looks like he did before, and I think that's both a good thing and a bad thing. I think he had a fine game. He had a couple of impactful plays, but overall, I'd say okay. Oh, and I'm getting word here. We have a third person joining.
Hey!
Sources say.
Ross Jackson is joining us. Ross, we are going over the defensive side of the ball. We just started talking about Chase Young.
Oh, okay. I'll come back later.
We can, so I guess start there. What are your thoughts on the defense? You can start with Chase Young. You can go from there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Chase Young was kind of, a non-factor, which isn't massively surprising in his first game back, everything like that. But certainly you would have liked to have seen him be able to finish some of those plays where he got close to the quarterback, kind of same old issues for New Orleans, almost sack after almost sack after almost sack. And it seems like Chase Young is, going to continue, or at least has continued here early to be a culprit of exactly that. But this is a Saints team that didn't do a lot on the defensive side to help itself out at all, whether it came to blown coverages downfield. They got lucky on a couple of plays. And then, of course, no pressure on the quarterback. Like that's not going to be a very good formula for you while the offense is also struggling. And so, I thought this was a really disappointing display by the Saints defense. It just is coming off of a 5 consecutive turnover a game where they were kind of riding high. And then this is the performance that they turn in after that. Less than ideal.
Yeah. I want to talk about a move that was made that I think is the only thing that I saw on the defensive side of the ball that made me excited. And I think that even if, that change didn't stay throughout the entire game, it was a great decision. I'm talking about Pete Werner getting benched and Danny Stutzman coming in for a little bit, at least 6 plays. I'll use the term benched loosely. He came back in the game a little bit later, but he did get sat and Danny Stutzman came in. Danny Stutzman looked strong. They went back to Pete Werner, and look at that. Pete Werner was playing a little bit more aggressive. He had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He was playing, like he just got benched. And I think that lighting a fire under this team, usually, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is what needs to happen. And I think we saw it with Pete Werner in that moment.
Let me say this. Dylan is a very happy person, but hearing him jovially say that Pete Werner got benched was hilarious to me because it just sounded like almost like a celebration. I know it's not, but like that was so funny to me. But
I'll talk after this. I'll talk after the show.
but in all seriousness, A, sometimes you do need that fire. Number one. B, did I say A or did I say 1 first? I don't know. 1A, 2B. Yeah, whatever. Letters A, B, C, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's good to see that fire because sometimes you need to let people know there are repercussions. You're not playing up to the standard, and this is what happens. And I think that if that's just a message being sent, that alone is something that I think is positive. You mentioned how he responded to that, but also when Stutzman came in, I noticed Stutzman, and not just because he has a neck pad on, but because he also was getting engaged in the run game, because he was to me the Stutzman I thought, and he was I'm not going to say a standout, but I noticed him on the field. And I think when you're getting your first couple of snaps, that's a good thing. We'll see what happens. To me, the idea of sitting down Pete Werner, even momentarily, for the mixture of Stallbird and Stutzman tells me that this could have a more permanent move happen in the future if Werner does not rise to the occasion. That's what it tells me. So I'm on alert. Now I'm watching and monitoring.
I mean, this is what happened with Quincy Riley, right? Like Quincy Riley started to get mixed in and everything, and then all of a sudden he became, more mixed in, and he became a starter. And of course, that's aided right now with an injury for Isaac Yiadom. But I mean, the Saints have already shown that they will go out there and get a look at these young players and then give them the opportunities that they're earning and that they're deserving. They didn't just take Pete Werner off the field for Danny Stutzman. They took him off the field for Isaiah Stallbird, too. They had Isaiah Stallbird in there, especially on third downs. They like what he can do in coverage. He's kind of earned that role over the course of the past couple of games. And so it's been really interesting to kind of see them undergo that. I think it gives you a pretty good indication that this is a team that knows very much where it is, knows very much what it is. I mean, even down to Mickey Loomis talking to Alvin Kamara about the potential of a trade and other teams calling and stuff like that. You don't do that if you're not expecting that there's a chance that player says, I would like to go to a winning opportunity, because this isn't a winning opportunity. You just trade the player. And so for New Orleans, like, it's clear that they have a pretty good understanding of where they are. And I think that some of these things that we're seeing in terms of younger players getting more opportunities, things like that, is a pretty good indication of that.
And I'll tell you why I really like it is because I was a big fan of this draft class when it happened. And I think you have some guys specifically in the mid rounds who they could easily fall in and just kind of just get lost. We talked about this earlier, Ross, about the Saints probably needing a number 1 corner, and the idea of Riley maybe competing with Kool-Aid, where he's putting up tape right now to see if these two do go head to head, or, in the future of that position. Stutzman's one of those guys in the middle. I hate that Broughton ended up getting hurt, but we see Sanker. The more guys who get kind of naturally put into the lineup, I think you're going to have a better idea of what you have in this draft class. And in my opinion, the 2025 draft class has the potential to field you maybe 3-4 starters out of just this class. And if you're Kellen Moore going into your first year and then going into the second year after that, this is the type of class you want as a foundation, but we need to see these players on the field. We saw Sanker on the field. I think that he's shown himself. Yes, I didn't think it was the best day today, but this happens. Even veterans have rough days. You look at a guy like Kelvin Banks Jr. Need we say any more? I think that has already been obvious with him. Then you have a guy like Stutzman who comes in, may be able to have a impact. So these are just things to monitor throughout the year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Final overarching defensive takeaway, I think, is the cornerback room needs to improve a little bit better. The coverage is inconsistent, like Ross's internet connection.
I don't know what happened there, actually. I have no idea what happened. It was just like your phone's not available. And it's like, it's right there. It's very available.
Kool-Aid McKinstry targeted 5 times, gave up 5 catches for 83 yards. Alontae Taylor targeted 7 times, gave up 5 catches for 38 yards. Quincy Riley targeted 4 times, gave up 2 catches for 45 yards. Jonas Sanker targeted once, gave up a catch for 53 yards. That one big one earlier. Overall, I think they just need, we've said it a couple times. They need playmakers all over the place, but the secondary and a cornerback especially is something that I'll be looking at heavily next year in the draft and in free agency. This team likes to spend money, so maybe they'll do it at some point.
And they might actually have some money to spend next year.
Might have some money to spend.
The good
rather
news
than
for New
spending
Orleans
fictional money.
Right. One of the good news pieces of all this for New Orleans is that like Quincy Riley also has slot versatility. And so if something happens and you can't reach a contract extension with Alontae Taylor, or you get a really good offer for him or something like that, you can still move Riley and allow him to be sort of this impact player in the slot, and then address your outside corner positions with Kool-Aid McKinstry and then whoever it is that you add to the team, whether via the draft or via free agency. So you have some options there that would still keep some of those guys on the field, depending upon how things go with the future of Alontae Taylor. He's kept contract talks kind of open with the Saints over the course of the offseason. The course of the season so far. So we'll see where things go in terms of him potentially getting an extension. But with that November 4th trade deadline coming up, that might expedite a little bit of that process, or at least get them to the points where they're comfortable and have a really good groundwork already laid to where when they get to the offseason, they can kind of make those decisions at that point. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they go about addressing it, because it's a really young secondary, and right now a secondary that hinders on ineffective in some cases. And so finding ways to be able to kind of create more consistency in the effectiveness, a game like Kool-Aid had last week, a game like Jonas Sanker has had already, just finding a way to get all those things happening at the same time, as opposed to today where it felt like none of those things were going right. That's got to be a top priority. And that's going to be a lot of execution stuff and a lot of potential adjustments by Brandon Staley.
I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. We're going to have some trade talk on Wednesday's episode, so come back for that. We're going to have picking up trade season. But as for the rest of this episode, we're going to be moving on to the offense coming up next, and then getting into our players of the game. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe that it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is Blake Grupe going 4 for 4 from his field goals. I'm a big believer that the apology needs to be as loud as the disrespect, and I'll own up to the disrespect that I've had for Blake Grupe. Most of it in good jest, but he hasn't been as good as I would say that a starting kicker needs to be. But today he went 4 for 4, hit a big 54-yard field goal. So here you go. An entire segment of me saying, "Good job, Blake Grupe. You did it. You made your field goals, and everyone's going to be happy this week because we've talked about it. Whenever you have a field goal missed in the red zone, it is back-breaking and halts the game completely. So making your field goals, moving the game forward is exactly what you need to see out of the kicker that you have. Because whenever you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, let's get into the offensive side of things. And I guess we can start with Ross. Where do you want to start on offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should start with Spencer Rattler's day. I thought Spencer Rattler had a strong day, completed over 76% of his passes, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but just, the offense as a whole, just it's like they get past the 50-yard line and then things just kind of stagnate for them. The field condenses and they're not really sure where to go. Kellen Moore says that's more so on him than anything else. But it's been 6 games of it now, so you'd like to start seeing the improvement as opposed to hearing whose fault it is. And so I think when you have a really strong game from your quarterback like that, the thing that you need to be able to do is actually put points on the board. And I thought that he did a good job. I thought he was aggressive. He came out on that first play and completed that 50-plus yard pass to Chris Olave down the right sideline, and it felt like they were about to start cooking at that point. But then just an inability to be able to get into the end zone again and everything. And so that's always going to create not necessarily a perception, but it's always going to kind of put a ceiling or cap what the perception could be. If you can find the end zone, you're having a very, very different conversation about this game, about these players, and the conversation around Spencer Rattler is probably even more positive at that point. But I think even without that, he had a pretty strong game today.
Yeah, I thought that there was a couple of things that went wrong, and most of them were after the 50, like he said. I wanted to check to see how often that the Saints got inside the 20, because oftentimes we make this a red zone conversation.
Right.
And as time goes on, all you do is go reflect on red zone numbers. Heck, I've pulled up red zone numbers here, but they had a drive that stopped just short of the 20. So technically that's not red zone inefficiency. And then as you go back and you look, they're 1 of 2 in the red zone. So I think that if you only look at numbers, then sometimes it's a little bit misleading. So Ross, I thought it was a great point that you brought up once they passed the 50, because sometimes it's inside the 30. Sometimes it's between that 30 to 35 range when you're at fringe field goal range. So I did, man. I thought Rattler looked poised for most of it. I thought he once again handled the pressure. I kind of don't get tired of being repetitive on that, because it's one of the best developments that he had over the offseason going into year 2, is that he's able to diagnose when to move and when to and how to move. Because whether it's I need to step to the side, step up, or if I just need to kind of take off right now, he tends to have a really good feel for when to run when he's in the pocket. So I think that's still the favorite trait of mine that he's shown. But offensively, I just think you need players who are going to rise to the occasion. And right now, I don't know if the Saints have them. Just simple and plain. I don't know if when the big moments are here, if you have players who are going to rise to the occasion. I think you have guys who can make plays throughout the first 45 to 55 minutes, but when the last 5 minutes come up, I don't know who I'm looking to, and I'm saying, outside of Alvin, that's the guy who I think is going to make the play. Throw it up to him. They're going to make the play. Maybe they might make the play, but I don't have anybody I feel definite about on this team. And honestly, that kind of goes offense and defense. I know we're not talking about the defense anymore, but I don't really feel like I struggle to find the impact players on this team. And the main impact players are the guys when the moments are at their highest, they're going to show up the most. And I think that running back and Alvin Kamara and then linebacker and Demario Davis are probably the closest that they have to that at the moment. But a lot of times we're talking about in that moment plays that are made through the air, and they're largely taken out of that equation. So the Saints need more impact players. That's my biggest takeaway for the Saints offensively.
Yep.
Yeah. It was a weaker day on the ground for them, the running backs. But again, I don't think that's a huge point of worry for me. If anything, it just shines a light on how much more they need playmakers in the passing game. Because, what we've seen before, you're not going to be like, man, Alvin Kamara, he's not a good enough running back. Kendre Miller's, been good this year as an RB2. The offensive line was, had some inconsistencies, but overall it was all right. But whenever games like this where you don't have the run going, you need those guys to step up on offense. You need those pass catchers to come through in the clutch. You need all of those things, and they just simply haven't had it. You see a game where you have Chris Olave, he has a big catch. Rashid Shaheed then disappears. Getting people on the same page and creating big plays all over the place is where you need to see it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's like the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago where somebody had asked, is Chris Olave a true wide receiver 1? And if you're going to be the team's top option, some of these drops, that second down drop that led to the 3-and-out that effectively created the 3-and-out after they got the ball back with 4 minutes left in the game, that's a massive drop. And that's crossing route, placed a little high, but caught it and effectively threw it into the ground. Just not being able to come up with plays like that. The fade in the end zone felt like one that should have been caught too, or maybe could have been caught as well. You need a guy that you can really trust to go out there and make those catches. And right now it doesn't feel like the Saints really have that number one, I'm the focal point of your offense in the passing game, and if you put the ball in my direction, I'll make that play. I mean, look at the plays that Stephon Diggs made, even one that didn't count, which was an offensive pass interference penalty that I thought was absolute BS, by the way.
Yeah.
That was a terrible call. And there were a few of those. I think I saw you on social media, Dylan, talking about how like they all good. They brought in the blind refs today.
The first all blind officiating crew.
Yeah, man, they really did.
It was all over the place, bad on both teams. And yeah, I said it earlier. You know, the Saints honestly should be lucky that the officiating was bad in this one, or else it could have been way uglier than it was, because the Saints secondary just wasn't stopping anybody. But again, like we keep talking about the defense and it keeps slipping into the offense, just because I think that was the biggest takeaway for me today, especially the inconsistencies there. But the offense, I think, was the better half of the team, or the better third of the team. Sorry to all the special teamers.
But they barely saw the punter, so I don't blame you. You know, you didn't see the punter much.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And even he had a 23-yard shank off the right side of his foot. Like,
yeah.
But I'll say this, Dylan, I think the reason that the defense keeps sliding into this conversation is because there's no real silver lining for them. Like, I think the offense had a silver lining of, you know, they just weren't able to finish, but they're putting together some things. You know, hey, Olave got the ball down the field. There's things where you could say this was good, but on the defensive side, it just felt like it was all bad. So I think that's the reason that it tends to just keep blending into the conversation.
Yeah, I think I didn't really mean to bleed the defense into the conversation. I was more so talking about you need a wide receiver that can do things like Stephon Diggs can do things. You need a wide receiver that can do things like A.J. Brown can do things. You need a wide receiver that can go out there and do things like some of the top option wideouts in this league can go out there and do. The Saints don't have a Nico Collins, let alone an A.J. Brown. You know what I mean? Like they just don't have that guy that feels like you can consistently count on them to go out there and make big plays. It's just not there. And now you have the opportunity sometimes downfield with Rashid Shaheed. You had the opportunity with Chris Olave downfield, and those guys made those plays. But
you found Devon Vele down,
right?
And it got stripped away from.
And then it got stripped away, right? And so then I think, like, for me, the big thing is who's the guy when it's 3rd and 7 and you need 8. Who's the guy when it's 3rd and 10 or 3rd and goal from the 10 and you need to put up a lob into the end zone? Like, the Saints just, it doesn't feel like they have that guy. That's the guy that I'm looking for.
And I think until you have it, we're going to continue having these conversations where Olave, I think he does enough where you feel good, but then the critical moment happens and you don't. Right. And that's the biggest problem, because what you're pointing to are critical moments. So he had 6 catches for 98 yards is what I think they have.
Great day. Yeah, 100%.
That's a solid productive game until you start breaking down the timing of it, where he had 5 for 83 for a long time. And then you break down that drop that you mentioned earlier. You talk about this other pass where he had the high pointed. And I was literally in my living room when Olave high points the ball, and I begin to yell because I don't usually see those type of aggressive, strong hands guys right there on him. And then he drops it. And in my opinion, it was actually a fumble. I think the conversation of what is and what isn't a catch makes it all subjective. So either he drops the ball or he fumbles it. Neither one is a good outcome. But those are critical moments where that could have been a first down for the Saints. I think that was a 3rd down attempt. So these are critical moments where you don't pop up and you don't make the play. And not only do you not make the play, it's one thing when you're not being targeted, but it's another when you do get the look and the play is there for you. And it seems like he's not making the play when the play is there. So often we talked about, man, you got to get Olave involved. You got to do this. You got to do that. And then it feels like we did this and we did that. And then this is the result. And it's a little bit even more crushing knowing that you asked for this opportunity and you don't see it. Right. And when I say you, I mean the fans, not Olave.
Yes. Yeah.
To me, it really feels like at this point, it's 6 because there are a lot of players on the team. I want Chris Olave to do good. I love Rashid Shaheed, but it's like in 2 years, I think we're gonna have like a completely different wide receiver room in New Orleans.
I think that's very possible.
It's not 100%, but it just feels like there could be a complete shift. And it's not only the Saints, like both players need to be better, but they also probably want different opportunities. So I can see both sides being like, all right, it's time to just Let's look somewhere else.
And I think
and we'll talk a little bit more about that during trade talk on Wednesday for sure, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I think the idea of evaluating whether or not Olave can be that guy for you, or really trusting if he can develop into being that guy for you, is going to be a large part of what you do with him at the trade deadline. I think that's going to be a huge part of the conversation. Do you say we want to keep him around and then go get some guy that's going to be our top guy, and then you have a conversation of what do you pay Olave if you go get another young receiver who we think is going to be our number one? I think all of those conversations are going to go into play. I personally have never been the biggest fan of Olave. I think Ross and I have had this conversation a few times over the years on where I've stood on the play, and I just think that I was never able to put it into words, but the critical moment that we're talking about, I think that he has the talent to lead a decent offense, but I don't, as a receiving threat, but I don't know if he has the big time moments or the ability to deliver in those big time moments to be the leader of a great receiving attack. And I think that's finally how I can articulate what I thought about Olave. Sorry, Ross, that's like 2 years late. I should have told you that 2 years ago.
All good.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's get into our scramble together some players of the game, some positive takes to take away from this one. And if you have any questions in the chat that you want to ask, you can use hashtag Dylan was right, because I was the only one to pick the Patriots to win this game. And now me and Ross are tied on our predictions at 5-1. So yeah, hashtag Dylan was right if you want to ask a question, and I'm going to hold you to it. But go to next, we're going to get into our players of the game. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I'm over at my friend Shay's house right now. Shout out to Shay. He's in the chat. And last night we were playing, I was watching some college football. He saw me on FanDuel, and then we set him up with an account, put down $5. His first bet hit, and now he has $300 to lose on crazy parlays that he's making. But $300 in bonus bets is it's a huge win for just putting down $5. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. I love how FanDuel gives so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, let's wrap it up today with the players of the game. And let's start off with Darian. Who is your player of the game in this one?
I'm going to go with Jonathan Bullard. He popped out and surprised me with some of the plays on the interior. I actually thought that the interior made some plays in the running game for the defense. It was probably the lone bright spot on that side of the ball, in my opinion. And Bullard could have had 3. He had one play where it was taken away for defensive holding, where he grabbed, I think it was Campbell, to try to free up Pete Werner. He ended up making the tackle himself. He didn't even really have to do that. He could have had another tackle for loss on his resume. But I thought that Bullard in general popped out more than others. Him, Brzee, Gottschall. I thought that the Saints interior stalled out the running game. And I know we don't love the running game for New England anyway, but when Ramondre Stevenson has 13 carries for 18 yards, and you're looking at Trevion Henderson with 9 for 27, and Drake May ends up being their leading rusher, and a large amount of that is because of scrambling. You have a ways for that interior to go in the pass, and I think that's one of the reasons you didn't see many sacks for the Saints, because Young would get them to step up, but there was never any penetration in the inside. But on the defensive side of the ball, on the running side of the ball, I thought that interior did a pretty good job. So I'll go with Jonathan Bullard and company, but I thought he was the leader of the bunch with the most TFLs.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. You know, it doesn't feel great that we're at a point where Jonathan Bullard is getting player of the games for the New Orleans Saints, but I like the pick a lot. Ross, who is your player of the game?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the only answer to this question is Spencer Rattler. And, you know, it's not that he had like this huge game or something like that. It's just, you know, he was the most steady player. He had one turnover-worthy pass over the middle of the field, trying to gun one in. I don't mind that. Take your risk, especially if you're feeling good. 20 of 26 on the day. thought he took care of the football, made some good decisions, got off to a really fast start with a big 53-yarder or 50-plus yarder, and then also set a career high again, which he set last week. Now he's reset it this week with 8.7 yards per attempt. So you can just kind of feel him getting more comfortable distributing the ball further downfield. The offense kind of opening up a little bit with him at the helm. And so I feel like he's really the only answer that I could probably come up with. I thought the Jonathan Bullard one was a really, really good pull because he had a really strong game. But going outside of that, I feel like Rattler is really the only other answer.
Well, I'm going to go with Adrian Hill, the lead officiant in this game, because he kept a couple big plays off the board. He did more to stop the Patriots than the Saints did in this one. So, I'm going to give it to Adrian Hill. Shout out to him.
Nice.
Because, I was going to go with Rattler, but I also knew that you would pick one of them.
Yeah.
So I've been scrambling to figure out that guy's name because I completely forgot what it was. So yeah, Adrian Hill. Shout out to your crew.
All right.
It was terrible, but keep at it.
It helped us.
Yeah, right. I thought Brzee had some nice moments too. He had a couple of really good plays in the run game in particular, which is kind of that place where you're kind of looking for him to develop. Had a couple of nice spin moves in the middle, but wasn't able to get to the quarterback, which was just kind of the story of the Saints defense as a whole in this game. But I'll give him a quick shout out as an honorable mention as well. But I'm not putting him up for, player of the game or anything like that.
Let me ask y'all something, because I wanted to get into this when we were talking about the defense, but it kind of slipped my mind.
Did you use hashtag Dylan was right first?
Yeah,
no.
Right.
See, you gonna mute me? Never mind, you do that now. Dylan was right. All right. He sometimes he I forgot he really will do it. You got to know who to call their bluff. All right. But in all seriousness, when it comes to Chase Young and the almost sacks, and we're talking about Brzee, who I think also kind of needs to finish a little bit better at times, but it seems like when Brzee doesn't finish, there tends to be other people there who do finish. So it's kind of like you indirectly made that play, as opposed to Young. He doesn't. There's never anybody else there. So it's really a highlight on what he didn't do. But to Young's inability to finish at the quarterback, how much did you guys feel like that was because Young just struggles in that department versus Drake May's legs? Because I thought he had really good pocket awareness, really good mobility, and good timing and feel as well.
I think it had. I personally think it had more to do with this is Chase Young's first game of the season, and so I'll be interested to see if it gets better there. But to your point, like, Chase Young struggled with the same thing last year too. Every Saints pass rusher somehow struggled with that situation. So I think that part of it is, quarterbacks are hard to tackle. We think that they're easy to tackle. They're not. They're hard to tackle. But also, there's a track record here that I think is worth not ignoring.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just probably a little bit of both, because we're talking to Drake May is one of those game changer type quarterbacks. He can do it all. He has great pocket awareness to get out of the way, but there were, the big Chase Young almost sack. I was thinking that was Chase Young. He missed the sack, like overplayed, overrushed. It was a combination of things, but I would think that one was a little bit more on Chase Young.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if second game, third game, if he gets more comfortable there.
Let's get into a couple of these questions. Burtonstein, hashtag Dylan was right. What would the Saints potentially get back on a trade that sent Warner somewhere? Probably not a ton, honestly. Probably not a ton.
I don't think you're going to get a lot. You're probably going to day 3 something or another. Yeah. I don't think you're getting a second or a third for him because you got to think about compensatory selections and how that kind of bases where the market would be. All those other things, and just looking at his contract level and everything, he would not be a guy that would yield better than probably a 4th round comp pick signing elsewhere. And so I would say probably a day 3 pick of some sort.
I saw someone earlier, I think it was A Wags back in the chat, said that Juwan Johnson wasn't worth a 5th of bourbon. So I've never heard that one before, but I thought that was a bar. And that leads us. Well, Terry, you can look that up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask something about what Ross said about Warner's contract. What's the flexibility with that? Not just in the trade department, but also if at the end of the season, because I think the dissatisfaction is pretty long term with certain people. the idea of if Stutzman pops up and you do just decide to move on from Warner, is it a favorable contract to move on from at the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, you're taking on dead money. You've already played 6 games of the year, so that's already going to have prorated some of the contract out. But that's a deal that they've already restructured. And so because they already restructured him, it would probably be around 10 million in terms of dead money that you'd be taking on. So trading him right now is not the most advantageous thing. And that's another reason why you're probably not going to get a lot for him too, because you're asking somebody else to take on additional money and all that, because they've restructured stuff into future years. And so he's carrying, like different things, like a $6.25 million guaranteed salary for next season. And that's guaranteed base. That's not even what's restructured and everything and prorated. And so like, that's part of the reason why it would be a challenging thing to trade Pete Werner, because this is always the thing, right? This player plays poorly, they should trade him. Well, those two things cancel one another out. And then secondly, the contract is not a hyper tradable, like an easily tradable contract.
All right. Speaking of contracts, tradable contracts, regrettable contracts, Ransom Antoine, how long will we rely on Juwan Johnson? He is Jared Cook 2.0. That is fighting words in New Orleans. But I think you're going to have to rely on him for a while. They did just give him that 3-year, $30 million extension or whatever it was, a new contract. It was, a questionable decision, but you always see the vision with Juwan, and nothing has changed. He's still incredibly inconsistent. He has moments where you're looking like, man, this guy is a tight end one. He's finally done it. He's made the change, and then it looks again like he is a converted wide receiver that wasn't too great in college and then hasn't been that great in the NFL. So you never really know who you're going to get. And it's unfortunate, and that's part of the reason that we were talking so much this offseason about still wanting to draft Tyler Warren. Shout out GM Lance. He was in the building today, so he's not on the show, but still got to give him his props there. That would have been an awesome pick. Tyler Warren looks incredible, and the Saints need another tight end. So I think tight end is going to be something they look at in the future.
Yeah,
soon, the near future, even though they did just get the contract, give him that new contract. So I'd say you at least have to rely on him through the end of this year.
Yeah. I would add, I feel like he's been less of the offense recently. Like, I just feel like maybe it was the first 2 weeks, it was an extreme reliance on him. It felt like he was almost Spencer Rattler's favorite target. And then the last few weeks, it just feels like, I know the reliance technically means as the best tight end on the team. I know that's not exactly how the question, or I assume that's not how the question was being posed, but it does feel like he's been less of a factor within the offense today. I had to go check. He had 2 catches today. I really only remember the one that he had that ended up being a fumble, but it just doesn't feel like you see a lot of them. And I don't know what that's about. If it means anything, could just be ebbs and flows.
That's just the part of the Juwan Johnson experience. It's been for years. There are, many weeks where he does look like the quarterback's best friend, the quarterback's top target. And then other weeks he completely disappears. It's a part of the frustration that a lot of people had whenever he was signed to that new contract that paid him to be like a top 15-ish or whatever it was tight end in the NFL. I think he's, probably still around top 15, or like 15-ish. He has the moments, but also it doesn't, it's inconsistent. They do need another one, I think, is basic another tight end, but you're gonna have him for at least this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough too. Like when you sign a guy to that contract and then you have 5 tight ends on your roster, and you've got to get at least 3 of them playing time, at least 4 of them playing time at this point, with the way that they utilize Taysom, with the way that they, although I know Taysom's not technically listed as a tight end anymore, but the way they utilize him, the way that they utilize Morrow, the way that they utilize Johnson, the way that they utilize Stoll, like he was their leading receiver for the first few weeks because the other guys weren't around and everything. And then now all of a sudden the other guys are around, and that's why you're seeing some of his usage go down and everything. And so I think that they indeed will need to look at the tight end position again this offseason, but they're going to have to do more than just add to it. They're going to have to do some addition by subtraction to make sure that whoever it is that they bring in that's going to try to help that position group is actually going to be able to be a core focal point in the offense. Because right now, when you're not able to get these guys in rhythm and all these other things, like it creates, what are you going to do, add another one? You know what I mean? Like, then what are you going to do? You know, and so it's going to have to be there are going to have to be a lot of tough decisions made in terms of who is a part of the future of this team and who's not a part of the future of this team. And those conversations are going to be tough over the offseason.
Yeah. The only thing
you're still learning to answer those, by the way. You don't have the answers to that 6 weeks in. You're still trying to answer those questions.
Yeah. The only answer that I have is, or the only thing I would do is make sure that I'm right here on Wednesday for the next episode of the Saints Squad Show. Thank you for listening. You can check out me, Ross, and Darian on our socials for the latest. We'll be right back here on Wednesday. We're going to talk some trades. We're going to talk more of this game. We're going to preview the Bears game, Dennis Allen reunion week.
Kendra Miller revenge game.
It's gonna be interesting. A lot of storylines. It's gonna be fun. Until then, be sure to check out Locked On Saints with Ross for the latest on all of your news. But until then, see you around. Thanks for listening.